kind of borrowing Zeus Pantera style here, and you won't see my mug, but you will see what I'm talking about on your picture. What I'm holding here is the brand new Lily Audio Genesis 1 headphones, which feature this CrystalCore driver technology. I don't know if you can see that on the sign there. I first was made aware of this through a review from Lachlan at Passion for Sound, and he pointed out that you could sponsor this on Kickstarter. So I hopped on board and became one of the early Kickstarter supporters. Through Kickstarter, I was able to sponsor this at an early bird price, and it was 750 US dollars, which was about 1,000 Australian dollars. The regular retail price for this product is 1,200 US dollars, although I'll put a discount code in the notes for those who might be interested in one. Now, the CrystalCore technology in these things that they're talking about is a small transducer, a piezoelectric transducer, directly coupled to a rigid 75mm diaphragm. So there's no coils, no magnets. It directly converts the electrical signal into a vibration and then translates that vibration instantly through to the diaphragm, which is rigid. So as it moves, it can respond quite quickly, and it can move a significant volume of air. You can also see from these ear cups that they've angled it so it's a little wider at the back and narrower at the front. So it does pull the soundstage forward a little bit, and I'll get back to the soundstage later. But the sound is something quite unique, and I found it enjoyable. I did have to, get used to it a little bit and have a few tweaks, but overall it's a kind of sound that you can only really hear from these headphones. It comes well packed with a double-lined cardboard box, and the headphones, cables, and accessories all come packed in a very nice hard case. It has a embossed Lily Audio logo on the front, and the case contains the headphones, the rather nice cable. I got the 4.4mm balanced cable. It also comes with another set of ear pads, so you get both leather and fabric, velour ear pads. When you order, you get your choice of cable. I got the balanced cable, but you can also get a single-ended cable or even a unusual cable which allows you to connect it directly to speaker terminals if you really need a lot of power to drive it. And you will need some power, which I'll get back to later. The connectors on the ear cups are a standard 3.5mm jack, so there are plenty of third-party cables available. The jacks are kind of interesting as they're rotated 90 degrees around, so the cables can hang down and across your shoulder. So let's talk a bit about the fit and the comfort. So these have a steel band with a nice perforated real leather strap. One of the few bits of kind of plastic on these things is these little sliders to adjust the size, but they work quite well. They're firm enough, but easy enough to move. You can see it's actually got a right and left indicator printed on the end of these little armatures. The ear pads This is the perforated leather version, but you also get a velour version. Now I have a very tiny head, so you can see that I've adjusted this right down to the smallest size, but it fits quite well. While they look kind of large, they're actually extremely lightweight. Most of this body, you can see they've cut panels out to help reduce the weight, and this is printed out of some sort of plastic composite. The only issue I really had with the comfort was sometimes when I'm wearing my glasses, these would put a bit of pressure on the band and transfer that to the bridge of my nose. I haven't really experienced that so much with other headphones, but these ones would do that a bit. Although I suspect that that situation is going to be unique to every person and may not be a problem for you. Certainly just a minor niggle. Now, power is going to be one of the big problems you're going to notice with these headphones. So here's the People Audio Genesis 1, and here is the new Thigh Audio ciphers. You can see I've had to put a bit of padding on here because my head's so tiny. These are quite efficient headphones, and you can drive them with just about anything. So for example, I've got the LG8 Think here, which has uniquely a inbuilt headphone amplifier, which is a little bit unusual these days. Most don't even have headphone jacks anymore. So if I play this at nearly full volume, you can actually hear it. You can probably even hear it in there off your head. If I put it on my head, yeah, that's pretty loud. I wouldn't listen at that loud level. So let's stop that. And just for a bit of fun, we'll now plug in the Genesis 1s. So resume play. Well, I can't hear anything. Let's pop them on my head. Yeah, that's barely there. I can hear them a bit on my head. You probably can't hear them at all through the microphone. So you're going to need a lot of power, and power is what we're going to talk about next. So how much power are we talking about? Well, the first thing you can do is you can forget about plugging it into your phone. You can forget about dongle decks, little dongles, any of these kind of, even little ones with external power. All these little kind of devices just aren't going to drive them. You'll barely be able to hear it. You're basically going to need to get something that's got a large transformer. If you look on the People Audio website, there's several models they recommend. I'll put a link to some in the description. The only two amplifiers I had that could actually drive them to reasonable listening levels were the Feliks Audio Elise and my SMSL SP200, which is a THX 888 balanced amplifier. The SMSL puts out about 5 watts, and the Feliks only puts out 200 milliwatts. However, they both have a very high voltage peak to peak. So the SMSL has about 19 volts peak to peak, and the Elise has about 21 volts peak to peak. And this is really about the minimum you need to drive these. You can pick up the SMSL SP200 on eBay secondhand. I managed to get mine for less than $200, so that's probably one of your affordable entry points. both the SMSL and the Feliks are probably at about the minimum. Like, you know, I can turn it up, but I have to turn it up a lot of the way, and I don't have much headroom left. But it gets to, you know, reasonably high levels of listening for my taste. Some people might want it a little higher. So let's talk about the setup for my listening tests. So my source was my Tidal Edition playlist, which has a collection of tracks that I regularly use to audition equipment. I then connected through Tidal Connect to a Volumio running on a Raspberry Pi, which has been installed into a enclosure with a touch screen. The Raspberry Pi has a DigiPlus digital DAC hat put on, which allows me to run coaxial digital signals out. That signal's fed into a FIO K13 R2R DAC and the new Schiit Mimmer DAC. From those DACs, the RCA goes out to Feliks Audio Elise, and the balanced output goes to my SML SP200. Let's talk about the audio quality. The first thing you're going to notice is, because of that rigid 75mm driver attached to that piezoelectric transducer, the impact on the bass is quite significant. It really moves a lot of air. You really get a kind of sense of presence from the bass. At first it's almost a bit overpowering, but once you adjust a bit, you realize it actually balances quite well with the mids and the trebles. The other thing you've noticed pretty instantly is the level of detail. The high responsiveness of the diaphragm really picks up the details. You'll hear things in certain instruments, timbre of strings, textures, details that you just don't really notice with other headphones. Presence of the extended bass and the detail in the bass is one of the real wonderful features of these headphones. When you listen to something like the live recording of High Water Everywhere by Joe Bonamassa, you can almost feel it has a standing bass in it, and you can almost feel the creak and the groan of the wood of the instrument itself. It's quite amazing. While the bass presence is quite noticeable, it doesn't overpower the mids and the highs. The mids come through, wonderful details in lots of instruments, male vocals like on Boz Scaggs, Thanks to You, come through wonderfully. There's a real kind of character in Boz Scaggs' voice. Female vocalists like Sarah Kay, when she, in her performance of Turn to Passion, again, wonderful detail, plenty of air around the vocals, lots of details in the guitar in Sarah Kay's performance. You know, the mids really have a kind of clarity and detail that are, again, quite fantastic. One of the very common early criticisms of some of the pre-production models of these was they may have leaned a little bit too much into the high end. Maybe, you know, that wasn't attractive to some people. They've said they retuned them for the production models, and, you know, I haven't heard a pre-production one, but the highs in this are fine. They extend right up into quite high frequencies. They're not overpowering, they're not sibilant, they're not harsh. They have, again, wonderful detail and texture. So, for example, in the Jazzistics version of Bette Davis Eyes, There's a part where they use a wire brush on a cymbal, and you can hear the grain and texture of almost every strand of that brush sweeping across that cymbal. It's quite great. And the ability to go to quite high notes is fine. In the wonderfully entitled Chocolate Chip Trip by Tool, starting at about the 1 minute mark and going nearly through the rest of the track, there's this really high-pitched sound in the background, sort of a pulse, and you can pick that up quite clearly on these, so there's no problem with the highs. The sound stage is quite nice. The ear cups are angled to bring the sound forward a little bit. When I first heard it, I thought maybe the sound stage was a little narrow, maybe a little two-dimensional, but as I adjusted, I really thought the soundstage was quite fine. Not as wide as something like my FiO FT7s or some of the Hi-Fiman products, but certainly adequately wide enough. Listening to Resynthesis by Max Cooper, which is a specifically engineered for headphones. The soundstage is quite fine, extends beyond your head. It's not all the sound's not in your head. I even found myself occasionally glancing around thinking there was a sound in the room. So the sound stage is quite fine. So where does this bring us? What's the summary? What kind of conclusions can we reach? Are these the headphones for you? It's hard to compare these to any other headphones. If you're just talking about price, you'd be looking at something like these FiO FT7s, which are planar magnetic headphones. But it's really hard to compare them because they have such different technologies in them. The FiOs are wonderfully smooth, detailed, has some similarities with the Genesis ones. You might sort of say these are kind of a bit more refined, a little bit more subtle perhaps, where these are quite lively, detailed and crisp, and these are perhaps slightly more refined, like these are bright white and these are kind of eggshell white, so it's a little bit hard to give you a direct comparison. So the other thing is, if you were only going to own one pair of headphones, these probably wouldn't be the ones. You need quite good equipment to drive them. You can't use them in portable devices. You'd really want these as part of a collection. You'd want them as something you could compare to some other headphones, something to give you a different kind of flavor. If you really want an all-rounder, you're probably better off with something like the new Thigh Audio Cyphers. These are, very nice sounding headphones. They compete very well with the Sennheiser HD600s, which are like a real mainstay of the headphone world. They're easy to drive. They're a lot cheaper. These are only about $400 US as opposed to $1,200 US. So if you're just starting or only want one headphone, you're probably better off aiming for something like this. But when you're ready to move up, when you want to try something that's totally unique as far in my experience, be prepared to get something to drive it. These are a very rewarding experience, and at the moment you get the extra satisfaction of being one of the few people in the world to even actually own a pair, so you can show off to your friends. On that note, remember there's a discount code if you want to get a discount on purchasing a pair of these. The code is valid till the 30th of June. I want to thank everybody for putting up with me and some of my cats, and hopefully we'll do another review again someday.